Dude, this is unbelievable, bro. Like, why did I not play this sooner?
I am pleased to see you well. Is it something urgent?
Dark Souls, the timeless From Software masterpiece. Where do I begin? What else is there to say that hasn't already been said about this amazing action role-playing game? I don't think I can really say anything that hasn't already been talked about countlessly. So let me try to summarize my experience and why I encourage more people to try this game even if they aren't big RPG fans. For this game not being a horror game, it does a great job surprising you and scaring you. What Dark Souls does right is that it welcomes you into danger and enforces action strategy to engage enemies. You don't necessarily have to fight head on, and in a lot of situations you can run. You choose where and when you want to fight. Your options are open to how you want to choose to engage in combat. Sometimes you're forced to single out a certain monster, but most of the time you can choose and plan your combat approach. My choices included fighting where I engaged enemies, using the terrain and environment to fight, or kill them, and also deciding if I actually wanted to spend time fighting the enemies. Sometimes you just want to go about learning how enemies fight and the mechanics involved. The combat feels interesting and well thought out. Dark Souls does it right, but there are some issues. My biggest complaint would be dying because of targeting problems. Sure, this could be blamed on being an old man gamer or just having lack of skill. Valid arguments and probably mostly true, but there were some flaws observed as well. Camera angle. It could sometimes prevent me from seeing my position or if I was up against a wall. It became very annoying in the catacombs trying to find the necromancers. They were resurrecting the skeletons, but it was just mostly minor issues along my journey. I did have people in my stream watching me play and commenting on how calm I was after dying to hitbox related problems. I had some problems with weapon swinging and animations doing wonky stuff, and some camera obviously doing a weird targeting thing sometimes. Overall though, my time spent seemed pretty efficient for the difficulties I was enduring. I spent 60 plus hours on this first playthrough. Is that a lot? I don't know as far as Souls games go. Probably not. I have thousands of hours in many MMOs and ARPG titles like Path of Exile, Diablo, and World of Warcraft, so playing an ARPG for 60 hours is a drop in the bucket for me. But I do think you could spend thousands of hours in Dark Souls if you really took the time to find everything, and try every weapon and magic spell. I also think you could spend many hours improving your boss combat. For years, I watched random clips and streams of people playing various Souls games and having trouble on bosses. Dark Souls really just throws you into the encounter most of the time. In fact, there were a few situations where I had no clue it was coming, and it's hard to describe that feeling as a new player to the series. I had one person tell me they were jealous. They were jealous because I was experiencing the game new, and they'd give up a lot to play Dark Souls again for the first time. I understood immediately what they were talking about because it felt like I was a young man again, experiencing some new, revolutionary game that had just been released. Revolutionary, but also painful. I wish I could have tracked my deaths overall. I will say that I probably died a lot less to bosses than to environment and random enemies in the game. Fighting on narrow ledges and stairs was pretty difficult. I chose the ZWEIHANDER, as some of the natives call it, as my primary weapon of choice, and with that came some of the downsides of narrow environments. I did feel like two-hand combat was insanely powerful against bosses, and really no other weapon felt much more satisfying that I chose. It didn't take away the fresh boss fight feeling, and observing and learning the behavior of the mob and what it does. It's kind of the enjoyment of a fresh game launch. Bosses seem intricately designed and mysterious. The mechanics are difficult and well thought out. I think the difficulty is mostly from first-time experience on mini-bosses. Not knowing if they have an AoE type ability or whether to use certain armor resistance to help mitigate some of the damage. Even with some issues on a few bosses, I still enjoyed every drop of blood, sweat, and tears spilled. I was challenged. I had to engage and learn, and let's be real, had I not had some counsel from people watching me play, I'd probably still be stuck trying to find that lever for the elevator that's hidden you know where. I wish I had attempted to play it sooner. I bought Dark Souls Ready to Die Edition in 2012. I installed it, attempted to play it with mouse and keyboard, and I was met with a huge amount of glaring port issues and control problems. I realized I would need an actual controller built for the game to play it on PC. This was a problem because I hadn't had a controller for many years. I believe Guild Wars 2 had come out around this time, or was coming out, so I was distracted away for many hours. Then time just passed. So I did what most people do. I put the game on the shelf for a while. 12 years. That's a pretty long and extended Steam purchase shelf life for a first playthrough. I kept hearing about how awesome the game was, and people were constantly bringing up the title, as well as how interesting and challenging it was. That's all I heard was how difficult the game was, and it went beyond water cooler talk at work to many people describing the game as being the best RPG they ever played, while also being the hardest and most rage-inducing. It was always highly recommended, though. So now that I have played it, do I recommend it to new players? Definitely. But not just RPG enjoyers. Anyone. This game is probably solidified as a top 5 RPG game of all time in my eyes now. It is difficult for me to explain my entire adventure in a short YouTube video, so I will go out saying Dark Souls 1 is the pinnacle of solo gaming. The mystery of going through a fog gate and not knowing what is on the other side, the sound of the NPC's creepy and unsettling giggles after every conversation, the glowing eyes of the skeleton mobs in the darkness, the well-thought-out mini-gauntlets of harder-to-focus fire monsters in hallways, the hilarious deaths and goofy stuff the mobs will do to bring some levity to a very dark atmosphere. All this and more awaits. Hopefully this has inspired you to play it, if you never have. Or even if you're a veteran of the game and decided to power it up for one last playthrough. Now you can start your adventure in Dark Souls. Start from the beginning like I did, and strap in for a hell of a ride. If you enjoyed what you saw or heard in this video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. I will try to make more content like this when I have the time. Thanks, and see you in the next one.